Hello and welcome to another Magic the Gathering draft video. It's Al here with you, and this is how to draft MTG. We're talking about white-black bats in Bloomburrow. As always, please click like and subscribe to support the channel. Leave me a comment, say hello, and let me know what you'd like to see in future videos. Always love to hear from you. White-black bats is a tier 2 archetype in Bloomburrow Limited, so not necessarily something that you're always looking to draft, but a strong deck nonetheless if you can get the good cards for it. It's got an aggressive go-wide style combining white's token generation with black's removal. So this is going to play a little bit like the white-green rabbits archetype, just with black cards instead of green cards. It adds some nice creatures with flying, which is always good, and you want to look for ways to pump up your team, just like you would in the rabbits deck. Some cards in white-black also give you an added benefit if you have gained life on your turn. So most often, how I think you're going to get into this deck is by starting with some good white cards, finding that green really isn't available at the table, and moving into white-black instead. Key uncommons for the deck: Thought Stalker Warlock, the 2 and a black 2/2 with Menace. When it enters, your opponent discards a card, but if they've taken damage this turn, you get to look at their hand and choose which card they discard. Brightblade Stoat, 1 and a white for a 2/2 with First Strike and Lifelink. These are just good cards in any decks, and they're certainly good here. Wix Patrol, 4 black for the 5/3 rat. When it enters, you mill 3 cards, and target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among cards in your graveyard. You're not really doing a self-mill theme necessarily in this deck, but the card is just solid nonetheless. Fell is 1 and a black for a sorcery, destroy target creature. Like to have that in any deck. Downwind Ambusher, the 3 and a black 4/2 with flash. When it enters, you choose 1, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or destroy target creature an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. This is an aggressive deck. You are going to be attacking a lot. This will help you win a combat or just kill a really big thing if you're attacking with a bunch of tokens, a bunch of 1/1s. You don't mind sending 3 or 4 1/1 tokens at your opponent, let them block one of them with their 4/4, and then you get to finish it off with the Ambusher. This card is just excellent through and through, and it performs quite well in this deck as well. Starseer Mentor is the signpost uncommon for white-black. It is 3 white-black for a 3/5 bat with flying and vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, target opponent loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. So not only does this put a ton of pressure on your opponent as a 3-power flyer, it also kind of stabilizes you because it's got 5 toughness and vigilance, and then if you can repeatedly trigger its ability, it's slowly going to eat away at your opponent's options and take over the game. If you have 1 or 2 of these mentors, you're definitely going to want to prioritize ways to gain life during your turn or ways to lose life during your turn. And we'll talk about what some of those are. Harvest Right Host is the 2 and a white 3/3 rabbit. When it or another rabbit you control enters, target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Then you draw a card if it's the second time the ability has resolved this turn. Not a bat, but core to what white is trying to do in general, so you're happy to just put together a bunch of rabbits and support them with the good black cards. If you have a couple of Harvest Right Hosts, just draft your deck as though it's a rabbits deck and support it with the black removal. Drift Gloom Coyote is 3 black for a 3/4. When it enters, exile target creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. If that creature had power 2 or less, put a +1/+1 counter on Drift Gloom Coyote. Just another nice piece of removal. Sometimes this deck will want to go a little bit later in the game if you've got some cards with the life gain payoffs, so this is a good way to make sure that you're taking care of problematic creatures on your opponent's side of the board. It's also really nice when this eats a token, gets a +1/+1 counter, and then is there to block for you as well. Moonstone Harbinger is 2 and a black for a 1/3 bat with flying and death touch. Whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, bats you control get +1/+0 and gain death touch until end of turn. Triggers only once each turn. So the more bats you have, the better this is, but it's pretty decent anyways just on its own. Then we've got the key commons for the deck, the white tokens package. If you watched my white green rabbits video, you'll know about these. If you didn't, go on and check that out. Head of the Homestead, 3 green-white hybrid, green-white hybrid. So in this deck, it'll be 3 white-white for a 3/2. When it enters, you make 2 1/1 rabbits. Carrot Cake, 1 and a white for an artifact food. When it enters, and when you sacrifice it, you get a 1/1 rabbit, and you scry 1. Also, nice bonus that you can sacrifice this to gain 3 life, as that will turn on some of your cards that care about gaining life. Intrepid Rabbit is 2 and a white for a 3/2 with Offspring 1, and when it enters, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So all 3 of these cards can each by themselves double trigger your Harvest Right host and draw you extra cards. So a really nice white rabbits package to put together and build a deck around that. Glide Dive Duo is a 4 and a black 3/3 bat with flying. When it enters, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Nice aggressive finisher, but also has the bonus of turning on your life gain cards. Saver is 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. You get a food. Again, that food can be sacrificed to gain 3 life. Turn on your payoffs. A nice in-draft payoff for this deck is Sonar's Strike. It's 1 and a white for an instant. Deals 4 damage to target attacking, blocking, or tapped creature, and you gain 3 life if you control a bat. Not very many drafters are going to be interested in this card, so if you have a few bats in your deck and you're looking like you're going to be in this archetype, you can expect to see a couple of these later in the draft, and they're going to be quite excellent for you. This deck also gets a couple of good creatures at common that help you gain life. You get Moonrise Cleric, 1 white-black hybrid for a 2/3 bat with flying. Whenever it attacks, you gain 1 life. So it pressures your opponent in the air and pads your life total while turning on your life gain matters cards. Life Creed Duo is 1 and a white for a 1/2 bat bird with flying. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain 1 life. So it plays really well with that rabbits token package that white is already trying to do. Scales of Shale, a premium card for the Black-Red Lizards deck, is 2 and a black for an instant. Costs 1 less for each lizard you control. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. Not at its best in this archetype, but sometimes might cost 2 mana instead of 3 if you've got a lizard kicking around, and still pretty nice, allowing you to win a combat, save your creature from removal, and turn on your life gain stuff. In terms of rares that might pull you into this archetype if you take them early, Season of Loss, a 3 black sorcery, choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. For 1 paw, each player sacrifices a creature. For 2 paws, draw a card for each creature you control that died this turn. And for 3 paws, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So most of the time, you're just going to be looking at the first 2, probably making each player sacrifice 3 creatures and then drawing 3 cards. But occasionally that third mode could kill your opponent, so keep your eyes open for that. Valley Quest Color is 1 and a white for a 2/3 rabbit. It says whenever 1 or more rabbits, bats, birds, and or mice you control enter, scry 1, and other rabbits, bats, birds, and mice you control get +1/+1. This deck most often is going to be full of bats and rabbits, so this card is going to give you lots of scries to keep your draws relevant into the late game and pump up your whole team for you, which you love in an aggressive deck. Valley Rock Color is 1 and a black for a 1/3 squirrel with menace. When it attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of other squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control. So this is going to push damage, it's hard to block, and it's going to give you a life gain trigger. The signpost rare for the deck, Zoraline Cosmos Collar, is 1 white-black for a 3/3 legendary bat with flying and vigilance. Whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain 1 life. Very nice. And whenever it enters or attacks, you may pay white-black and 2 life. When you do, return target non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So not only is it aggressively costed and statted, it's going to turn on all your life gain stuff and give you some late game staying power by bringing your stuff back from the dead. Essence Channeler is 1 and a white for a 2/1 bat. It says as long as you've lost life this turn, it has flying and vigilance, and whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When Essence Channeler dies, put its counters on target creature you control. So you do want to make sure you have a decent amount of life gain to make this relevant, otherwise it's just a 2-mana 2/1, which is not very exciting. Starfall Invocation is 3 white for a sorcery. It says destroy all creatures. If you gifted your opponent a card, you get to return a creature card put into your graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. So while this deck doesn't play from behind very well, if you have a Starfall Invocation, this can get you caught up from behind and put your best creature back into play. pretty backbreaking. White-black bats, a solid deck, not somewhere you're looking to start necessarily, but if you get a good pool of white rabbit token makers and green isn't available, you can try to move into white-black. If you start with some good black removal and you find that white's open at the table, this is certainly a great place to end up in the draft. Its pros are that it's well supported at common and that it doesn't rely as heavily on removal since you have flyers and life gain, so you're not too worried about blockers and you're not too worried about being attacked by your opponent's creatures. Its cons are that it's fighting for white-green's top commons. All those rabbit token-making cards are going to be contested at the table once everybody learns that white-green is the best deck. So you do kind of want to make sure that white is really flowing before you move into this archetype. The other con is that it's kind of lacking in raw power. It's got the aggressive deck problem that it can run out of steam. It doesn't have a super great endgame, so you do want to have a rare or two to pull up the power level of a deck like this. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you, as always, for watching. Please click like and subscribe to support the channel. Leave a comment just to say hey, or to give me some feedback, or let me know what you would like to see in the future. You can always reach me at howtodraftmtg@gmail.com if you have any questions or would like to inquire about private coaching. Until next time, bye for now.